The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris and Mark back asking the same question we ask every Monday night. What's Gannin On? I'll tell you what's going on, Mark. I've just about got my voice back from Saturday, just about, after I was screaming at the referee pretty much the entire game. But what's going on with you, mate?
Yeah, the Monday after the weekend before for us, isn't it?
Oh,
so it's kind of let's review. But no, it's I've been enjoying the NFL. I know you don't like it, but game on in the background here. So yeah, I'll not get distracted.
Well, to be fair, I'm not a big fan of the NFL, but I must admit, my God, I feel sorry for this poor old bastard who was there freezing his knackers off or freezing his tash off at this rate. My God, that is cold. I mean, it is cold outside, but my word, that boy is cold. That is not good. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to know what's made the tash so moist to get that cold. I really don't, but that is mighty cold, mighty cold. So that's about as much NFL action as you're going to get on this episode tonight, mate. So enjoy it. While
you notice how cold it was. There was a lad, I can't remember which player it was, running around on the field, which was just a t-shirt. Most of them were wearing the massive overcoats and stuff, and one of them was just wearing a t-shirt. And you're like,
class.
You are just insane. There were beers freezing in the stands and all sorts of, and we complain about it being bloody 0 degrees outside. Christ.
Well, it was nippy. It was nippy in St James's at the weekend, but unfortunately, a certain Belgian turned the heat up, which we'll get stuck right into in a minute. Just before we do, a little reminder we always say before we kick off: if you're new to the channel, you just checked us out for the first time. Hello, good to see you. Smash that subscribe button. We're over 6,300 subs now, so thank you very much to everyone who smashed that button recently. Loads of room for you if you're just checking us out for the first time. All free content, never more. But if you do want to give a bit back to the channel, there is an option down there to be a member. Click whichever option suits you best. We are live tonight, so jump in the comments. We've had a few of you already jumping in early doors. Ian is in the house. Good to see you, Ian. Splat is also there saying hello to Ian and hello to you, Splat. Simon is in the house as well, as is Ty and Marcus. So let's get this party started then. So beaten by the best is the first tag we're going to get stuck into. Mark, just before I let you jump in and continue your brilliant post-match analysis that you did on Saturday when I was in the Leazer's End scream that taught me lungs. I saw a lot of furore about the game on social media, a lot of anger about Eddie Howe. I think you had a few in the post-match comments as well. But I must admit, I sat and watched that live, and Newcastle United aren't sitting in 10th because we lost to Manchester City. We're sitting in 10th because we lost to Nottingham Forest, Luton, and Bournemouth, and Liverpool absolutely wiped their arse with us. Really, that game on Saturday was nothing like those other games. We were intense. We were at it, we were hanging with the best. We really, really were until arguably the best midfielder in the Premier League, if not, gets in an all-time 11, probably for many people, strode onto the pitch and basically turned the game in a matter of moments, really. Newcastle really deserved to hold their head up high, as does Eddie Howe. We'll get into some of the kind of pernickety little things that he could have maybe done or not done. But by and large, we were just beaten by a far superior team and much better players, in my opinion, Mark. I'm not having people sticking the loaf in saying the manager has lost the plot and it's time to get rid, because that team to me were playing for that manager at the weekend. They were playing for us. And I just think inevitably it just came down to, what we're going to talk about in a minute, really, which was there were just no options on the benchmark, was there?
No, and you're absolutely bang on. Look, when you can bring on arguably the world's best midfielder, that's the difference on Saturday. And look, when you look at it in its entirety, yes, Manchester City absolutely dominated possession. We said this on Saturday. But Newcastle were so dangerous on the break. And City didn't really have an answer to that for a large part, and Newcastle could have had 3 or 4 if they hadn't messed the early one up. There were another couple of options where they could have just played the final ball a little better. The finishes from Gordon and Isak were sensational. But largely, Newcastle kept the likes of Foden and that relatively quiet. I mean, I say that in an odd way because they had an awful lot of the ball. They played around the box, an awful lot of touches in and around the area, but the clear-cut chances they didn't make. And the ones that they had, there were a couple of easy saves from Dubravka and things like that. But it wasn't really until the introduction of De Bruyne that, and yes, it's 2-2, and yes, that when that ball gets played through, he's the one that finds that gap. He's the one that knows exactly where to play in. Foden had been doing something similar beforehand, but he was more easily marshalled. There's another level up from De Bruyne, and when you can, like I say, when you can bring on a player like that, that changes everything. And Newcastle don't have any ability to do that at the moment. They have an 11 or 12 with all the injuries that are there, and that cannot be forgotten. Yes, it's been a poor run recently. It really has. There's no getting away from that. But there are reasons, and it's not to give Howe excuses for it, because I think he's, and I've said this, I think he's made mistakes during this period, but largely he's really hampered by the fact that he doesn't have the squad to be able to bring players on as and when needed, and he hasn't got the financial muscle yet to be able to go and change that in this window either.
Yeah, I think you're bang on, mate, as well. As Simon says there, if De Bruyne's a week away from fitness, we probably, because he completely and utterly changed the game. He came on, he was comfortably the best player on the park by a mile. We all wax philosophically about Bruno, but this guy was levels ahead of everybody else, even probably 70% fit or something like that. He was absolutely outstanding. I mean, if I was being really paniggity, I would say his goal, I think we actually had a picture. I haven't put it in the thing there, but there was an image doing the rounds on social media where Bruno, Longstaff, and Miley was so far away up the other end of the park, which again we'll talk about week after week, that nobody was watching that run from De Bruyne. He just pulled back, he got himself 15, 20 yards worth of space. He had time to turn and run. We could have probably come out and closed him a little bit quicker, but we didn't do it. And he passes it into the back of the net. When I first looked at it after the game, I thought Dubravka's going to be saving that. And I looked at it again, and I think De Bruyne is very cute because he uses, I think it's share as the shield. And by the time Dubravka sees where it is, it's past him already. So I can't really be too judgmental on Dubravka when I looked at it in a bit more detail. That's my only criticism, is that maybe Share or Botman have to get out in front of De Bruyne's face. But in their defense, one of those midfield 3 has to drop, which is the problem that we've been having week after week after week. Thank you very much for your donation, Robbie. Really appreciate that, mate. Thank you so much for that, buddy. But yeah, this is the issue. We'll get in a transfer talk in a minute, and it's not good talk, really, is it? Let's be honest with you. If this was a transfer window, it'd be a fucking boarded up one on a council estate by the looks of it, I think, because nothing seems to be going on. But the midfield, I think you made a point about this as well, that Miley struggled a little bit in the first 10, 15 minutes to get into the game. He then started getting the ball. Some lovely touches, lovely ball for Isak, who probably should have put the third goal, away one-on-one with the keeper. But he got back into the game. His lack of pace is still apparent, but, his ability on the ball was there. Bruno, yes, him and Rodri were having a little bit of a one-on-one kind of battle, so to speak, at one point. But I think it was clear, Mark, for all of us watching, and even if you're not a Newcastle fan, how much we missed Joe Linton's physicality in the middle of that park. I mean, he was such a miss, wasn't he? We'll get on to Joe in a minute. Some of these rumours doing rounds are not good either. But in that particular game, and the way Joe had been playing as well, he would have been so key to getting a result at the weekend, mate, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and again, it's one where you just have to look back and say he's such a physical influence in that midfield, and you see it so much that you take him out and you're instantly hampered, because he's not. There isn't anybody else that will go and do that. Longstaff will do the hard work, the running. He will press, but he's not the physical presence that Joe Linton is. Miley's not that either. He's slight, again, he will
He's good on
press.
he's good on the ball, but he's not got that physical dominating side of his game, is he?
But the one thing I did see from him on Saturday was he did track. He did put in some good tackles. He put in some really, really well-timed tackles as well. But again, in a game, I guess like that, you want the player in there to rough them up a little bit, to make them feel like they're earning their possession. And Bruno does it to a point, but I guess from almost a little bit out of control at times for him, where he gets a little bit sort of hot-headed and he goes steamroller in, and he's lucky at the weekend. I think that he gets away with one, but Joelinton is such a miss. He really is. In games like that, he's such a miss because you want to be able to. He will fight for everything. He will make he will provide scraps for the other midfielders to then play off, and he's the one that he really needs a replacement for in this squad, because if he's missing, then he absolutely snookered, and if he's gone long term, it's dire.
Well, I can think of one player which we'll cover in the transfer in a second. Just before we crack on with the rest of this, great comment from Gibbo there. Good to hear that you've received your poster. So Gibbo won the 6K prize, so congrats to him. We got that all posted for him, and it's pride of place next to his Shearer poster, right where it should be as well, mate. So thank you so much for that. Good to know you got to give. Well, thanks for taking part, everybody. Hey, 7K, we're going to be there soon, guys. We've got 700 left to get there, and it's a great prize for 7K. I'm not going to let you know what it is yet until we get closer, but it is an absolute corker of a prize. So, yeah, smash that button, everybody who hasn't. Recommend us to family or friends, and then we'll get a 7, hopefully, lickety split. So, again, just looking at some of the comments here. Simon said in a normal season, yeah, again, it all goes back. We'll get into the squad in a second, Mark, but, Barnes, Joelinton, Tonali, Willock, but we're absolutely ruined by injuries. We really, really are. And I don't give a fuck who the manager is, right? If it's Eddie Howe, if it's, Alex Ferguson in his prime, if it's Ancelotti, if it's Guardiola, any manager is going to struggle missing so many players. If you fielded the Newcastle injured 11 versus the current 11, I think they'd give them a game. I really, really do. Do you know what I mean? It's scary. I know we've given a bit of a hard time on the podcast. I know I have. But a game like that at the weekend, that was screaming for Tonali. That's the kind of game you want Tonali in, to smash into people and rough it up and make things happen and give City a problem to worry about as well with his running and his energy. And if you'd had that midfield, no offense to Miley, I thought Sean was poor, if I'm honest with you. I thought his lack of ability on the ball is negating anything he's doing off the ball at the minute. He's really struggling. And I think he's come back from injury too soon in his defence. And I think he's looking fatigued, because Sean Longstaff is all about running, energy, and that's what his game is. Same as Miggy Almiron. And I think when he come back from injury too soon, he's looking exposed because he hasn't got the other attributes to back up the lack of the running that he has. But all of that aside, if there'd been no injuries and there'd been no suspensions, if you'd had a midfield 3 of Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes, and Sandro Tonali the weekend, I mean, that is a fucking midfield and a half for Man City to worry about, isn't it? But we haven't got it. That's the problem.
No, and you're right. When you look at that injury list, there's 10 missing at the weekend, and nobody's mentioned the likes of Elliot Anderson that could come in, Matty Target as well.
Wilson, Pope.
If he's not quite, if Eddie's not quite convinced on Lewis Hall at left back, Matt Target's a big miss, because even legs for the last 10, 15 minutes. And as I kind of said that at the weekend about, as much as it pains, even Matt Ritchie for 10 minutes, just for a fresh set of legs. I know he can't move very much, but he can move a damn sight better than some of the ones that have been running their asses off for 70 minutes. But yeah, I mean, Livramento was a massive miss being ill at the weekend. Obviously, Wilson being out again was huge, because you want the ability to then change it up front when Isak's run into the ground. There's so many missing, and you go back. You're right. That midfield 3, whether that is Joelinton, the original 3 from last season, Joelinton, Bruno, and Longstaff to run in for 55, 60 minutes, and then bring in the likes of Tonali and Miley, maybe, just to give more legs and more passing ability, to keep the ball a little bit better, maybe for the last half an hour. it's just not there. And yes, you almost accept a defeat against the best team in the world, but those players, it's so frustrating because when you think that what a difference those players could have made in that last 20 minutes, and again, I liken this a lot at the weekend to the PSG game. Exactly the same there. If you've got 3 or 4 players that you can bring off the bench to freshen things up for 20 minutes at the end, I don't think you lose either game, because that you don't sit back so far, because the players aren't so tired, because they're fresher, because they can put more effort in. Those balls into channels, a fresh forward can run onto it and pressure the defence, so it's not just coming straight back at you constantly. But it's ifs and buts, isn't it? Because the injuries are there, and there's no getting away from it. And I do think, and I said before, I think Eddie's made mistakes. I do think he has to utilise what he's got, regardless of whether they're good enough. Sometimes you just need the effort. You just need the legs on the field to be able to chase and to harry and to press. And the players at 75, 80 minutes at the weekend just couldn't do that.
No, you're right. I mean, we are going to have a special show this week, guys, with it being a bit of a break from league action. So on Thursday, me and Mark are going to do a bit of a half-term report on the players and Eddie. So make sure you tune in for that one at 9:30, and we'll be giving you our scores and our reasons for them as well. But just before I move on, Mark, 66 is saying, is that an Evermore mug? He's got eagle-eye cherries tonight. It was an Evermore mug. Yes, it was 66.
It's the more original badge of Evermore before we updated it. Ironically, yeah. I got these done about 3 weeks before I changed the logo. It wasn't great timing, but yes, it is. It is.
It is. We haven't got any merch on the go. We did toy with the idea a while ago, but yeah, God, that was an interesting debate. You never know. We may have merch coming in the future. Who knows? But as we sit right now, it's just a novelty mug, really. So yeah, I suppose, just kind of talking about the good things at the weekend, Mark. I mean, we'll get into the squad depth in a minute. The good thing at the weekend is Isak looked razor sharp. Again, it might have only been for an hour, but my God, what an hour he gave. I mean, I was in the Leazes and had a great view of the goal, his and Gordon's goal, and he was absolutely terrorizing Manchester City with his speed and his quick feet and his movement. He's looked sharper and sharper every single game that he's played, and it's almost like you're praying to any God that you believe in, this guy does not get injured again, because he's got 14 goals in all competitions now. If he stays fit to the end of the season, he's going well over 20 goals for me. And he just looks so electric. I mean, Guardiola was waxing lyrically about him after the game, and all of the footballing world after that goal was going, wow, that's what that guy is all about. But I mean, that whole goal in general, Mark, the first time ball for Bruno has to be said. The tackle from Cher, brilliant tackle. Proper energy, intensity, exactly what Eddie Howe's team is all about. The first time ball over the top, but the finish from Isak, Mark, the way he cuts it inside, such tight space and finds that corner. I mean, that is elite level goal scoring, isn't it? That's absolutely brilliant, man.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's 14 goals. I think it's a little over 18, 90 minutes played. He's got 16 games in the Premier League, 1 each in the FA and the League Cup, and 5 Champions League games. Minutes wise, he's obviously reduced because he's played a few sub games in the Premier League. Obviously, had to come off and things. So his goal to minutes ratio is exceptional. I think in the Premier League, he's not, is it 0.79? I think he's at for goals per 90 minutes this season. And he was something like 0.6 or something last season. So he is at that level. It's just fitness for him, keeping him fit, being able to manage his time, because again, you run him into the ground on Saturday because there's no option to give him a break. But he is elite, absolutely elite. And I saw your response to some of the comments online this week about Isak being one of the ones to be sort of.
I can't see it. I really
can't. Not a chance. I think him, the likes of Gordon, Botman, Miley, are the ones and I've left Bruno out specifically. They're the ones that I think eventually this squad will be built around. I have a sneaky feeling Bruno's not going to go now. He may not go in the summer, but I think he may move on earlier than some.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Purely and simply because of a financial exercise, and he just opens up an awful lot of doors because he has that has that release clause, and if he continues to improve, somebody will activate it. I'm convinced of that at some point, and if it is one of the big guns in Spain, then I think he moves on. But I don't think it's now. I know Fabrizio Romano got into a little bit of trouble with some Newcastle fans today when he posted that Bruno was in Paris, but it was nothing to do with a potential move or anything like. He was just having some family time, so he got a bit of stick for that. But yeah, I think the Isak thing, he is elite. He's a phenomenal player. He's so good at the ball with the ball at his feet. He's quick. He can finish really, really well. He can do with being a little bit better in the air at times, I think, when the ball lands on his head. But he can take that away from anything else because he's a special player.
He is. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Henry. I mean, everyone uses that comparison. He reminds me so much of Henry. And I actually think fully fit and firing, I think outside of Haaland, I don't think there's a better striker than him in the Premier League. I know a lot of people have said that. Out and out goal scorer, striker, threat. I don't see anybody other than Haaland, touching these out really. Sean's saying that he thinks Tonali was brought in to replace Bruno. There's a lot of talk about that. And that kind of a thing maybe is the future-proofing side of the Newcastle ownership that, we don't see what's behind the scenes. We've all seen Louis Miley progressing. Eddie Howe might have been seeing that for a long time, and he might have been saying to the owners, "Look, this kid's unbelievable." And then they might have thought, "All right, okay." And they get the chance to sign Tonali, and they think, "Hang on a minute, we've got Tonali coming in. If Bruno's worth 100 million and someone wants to pay it for us, we can spend it over 4 players." And they're looking at it from a business perspective rather than sentimentality that we do with players. So I think if Miley continues to progress, and then we'll get into the squad in a minute. If the offer comes in for Bruno, I think you might be right. Maybe he will go, but I don't think it certainly won't be January, and maybe not even the summer. But moving on to the next section, really, which kind of ties into 2 sections.
Just
you always do this. You pulling me back. I'm moving on. Stop
just
it.
Just 1 second.
How many times it's now?
Sure. It is on the Isak point. Just to give you a bit of context as well, we're talking about what a good elite level striker he is. And one of the names we're going to have to take out of this list because he's not elite, but I'll come to it. Of the top 4 players with goals per 90 minutes in the Premier League that have played over 5 games, Erling Haaland is number 1. Number 2 is Callum Wilson. So Erling Haaland's 0.97 goals per game. Callum Wilson's 0.86. Chris Wood is 0.85.
3 of them were against us though, so it doesn't really count.
And that's exactly why. And Alexander Isak is 0.79. He's 4th in that list. So you have 2 of the top 4 in terms of goals per 90 minutes played. And Isak, again, I mean, when you think of the time that he spent out, that's exactly what you want as your centre forward. He's scoring at the level you want your centre forwards to be scoring at. So yes, I'll let you move on now.
George is saying, but Wilson's only played about 5 games, so that's why he's got such a good record. So yeah, we will move on now. But thank you for dragging me back as bad as Bruno does when somebody's bearing down on goal. I'm gonna start giving you yellow cards, right? Anyway, so squad depth and transfers kind of tie in really to both, and it's not been very good in terms of the news going around Newcastle and transfers and lack of activity, but just concentrate on the squad. And I think it's a perfect way to talk about it, especially with that game. So I was talking to a mate of mine earlier on the day, and what's frustrating when you watch a game like that, whether you're watching it on the telly or live or whatever, is Newcastle's 11 can hang with a team like that for such a long period of time. And the difference is, as you said, Mark, they can go to the bench and they can bring on quality to change it. Now, it doesn't have to be somebody as unbelievably talented as Kevin De Bruyne. It doesn't have to be like that. If we had maybe, I don't know, an upgrade on Miggy playing right wing and Miggy's the impact player that comes on and runs at tired legs, it's things like that. And you look at it and you just think, how the fuck have we got to this stage as a football club where we've been bought by the richest people on the planet? You know, we can't spend any money thanks to FFP, but we have bought players in, and we've got to a situation where on our bench is Matt Ritchie, 2 goalkeepers, and a couple of Bairns, and you think, how the fuck is this gone wrong? You know, this is the difference. This is the difference between Newcastle getting a result against Manchester City on Saturday or not. Because if we have players to bring on to freshen up, as you rightly said, Mark, on the hour mark, if we can bring on a Wilson over Isak, maybe we do draw that game. If we can bring on a defensive midfielder in Hook, Sean Longstaff, who's running around like somebody who's lost in the middle of town looking for a fucking Greg's, you know, if we can do that, then sorry, Sean, but you were then you know we can change the game. We can sit and we can hold, or we can press, or we can play it up to a centre forward. We can hold the ball up and just take a bit of pressure off. And because we don't have it, it's so frustrating, and I don't understand where the fault lies here. Does the fault lie with the owners? Does the fault lie with Eddie? Does the fault lie with the medical staff? How the fuck have Newcastle got themselves in this situation, Mark? That's the question I want an answer to. I don't know if you're the man to give me it, but I'm going to ask you anyway because you pulled me back. So that's your yellow card offense.
as I am the oracle of everything.
As you are the oracle,
yeah. Look, it's. I don't think you can blame the owners. Yes, there's an element, and I'll go back to what I said before, that Eddie Howe, I think, has made mistakes in terms of his game management. Zach Nyker's 66. Yeah, absolutely right. You really can't cater for 11, 12, 13 injuries or something during this season.
But you've got to ask questions of your medical staff though when you've got that many injuries, or the way your manager's playing, and you have to ask that question.
And it comes down to those two sides. Yeah. Exactly. So it's either the absolute amount of effort that you're putting in, and I touched on this at the weekend by saying at some point you have to go, we need another way of doing this to be able to conserve some energy during games and be able to just go, right, we keep the ball now, and we don't expend that energy running and chasing and pressing from the off for 90 minutes, because you can't keep that up. I think I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to say. Is there a problem with the medical team? I think we've seen is it the head physio, the head's guy go last week after an extended period of paternity leave. So there's changes going on there. I think ultimately, when you look at this squad, the fault lies with previous regimes. The fact that the academy is practically non-existent. The production line of young players isn't there. The scouting network cast far around the world that the clubs have got was never there. You had a good period when Graham Carr was there about picking up French players that were dotting around and playing in Ligue 2 and some of the smaller teams and stuff in Ligue 1. That disappeared as quickly as it came about. The long contracts to poor players, the high
players who had
contracts
reached their limit. They'd reached their limit. Really, they were never going to get any better.
You've given contract extensions to players that were never going to improve and never going to really have a sell-on value. As a smart business person, it makes no sense for the likes of Hayden and Hendrick and Kieran Clark, and they were good players for a time, but some of them were given extensions. Some of them were given new contracts when they didn't deserve them. They hadn't done enough to warrant being given that length of contract. The fact that Hayden's got 2 years left on his contract, and the chances are that that's going to get written off, or he's going to spend the next 2 years dotting around on loan to places just to kind of just get him some game time. He's never going to play again. So I think the fault lies with a number of players. I don't think you can blame the owners because they're sort of hamstrung by what's going on outside of the club in terms of FFP. They're really really up against it in that regard. And the fact that the previous ownership had absolutely no commercial revenue. They didn't invest in that area. They didn't. I mean, I think I said in our group chat, if Mike Ashley had wanted to, he could have made double, treble what he wanted for the club. Had he been willing to get sponsorship in, been willing to invest in the playing squad, and he could have got far more for it. But he wasn't. He had his limit, and that was it. And this is where we see the squad, because half of that squad now is players that they're either kids that aren't ready, or they're players that just have come from that era and just aren't good enough for this level of football.
Yeah, I think Mike Ashley was too busy buying white shirts and jeans, mate. I think that's what it was. He had no money left. He had to buy himself a few more pairs. Paul's right there. I agree with Paul saying selling in the summer. He's talking about Wilson, Longstaff, Murphy, Manquillo, Kraft and Target. Few quid there, surely. All this talk about selling the players. I think Darren Neals was quite cute when he said that. It flushes out any bids, big bids for players that might be worth a few quid, like a Bruno. Listen, we're no different. You look at Liverpool over the years selling Suarez, selling Coutinho, Villa selling Grealish, even if you want to go right back to, Everton selling Wayne Rooney, stuff like that. There's always market value players that you can sell to rebuild your squad. Spurs did it with Bale as well, didn't they? When they went and bought 4 or 5 players. So, we're naive to think that we're not in that position, especially with FFP, as much of a twat as it is. And let's be honest with you, the FFP thing may very well be subject to change. We know about Forest and Everton. That has been announced today. But Kieran Maguire's been on the show before. Hopefully we'll get Kieran again at some point to talk about this. But he makes a great point there. The FFP regulations were put in place about 3 years ago, and they should have risen with inflation. So really the losses that the club should be allowed to make is over 200 million, not 109. And it hasn't done that, So I think we'll see clubs challenging the Premier League and these rules very soon. And I think if Everton are going to get done another 6 points, that could relegate them easy. If Forest get done, I think we can see some legal action coming there, and that might give a bit more wiggle room to, 2 teams. But going back to Eels, he didn't say we'd sell our best players. He said we would sell players, and I would be shocked if the likes of Miggy, the likes of Wilson don't go in the summer to maybe bring in some capital to reinvest in the squad. But when we looking at this window, I suppose, Mark, predominantly, and the transfer talk or lack thereof, we were all expecting to see Calvin Phillips coming in. This kind of dovetails in well with the squad depth. I mean, we don't have a number 6. It was an issue in the summer. I think the games that we've lost, I don't think we've drawn many of these. The games that we've lost, a number 6 would have been key to maybe getting a result in those games. We'll get into this more on Thursday, but Eddie's lack of, what's the right word, lack of kind of interest or urgency to shore it up in the midfield and continually play the high press even when we're up against it, has definitely left us exposed a few times. I don't think you can get away from that as a criticism of Eddie. We need a plan B. We need different options, but we need the personnel to give you that different option. Isaac Hayden's not good enough. I've seen some people even say, should we not keep him as a defensive midfielder? He's not good enough. He's not good enough at all. He's done well for us over the years, but as you said there, Mark, the problem is with this whole squad is it's littered with, the Klingons of the past, really, in terms of like hanging on to the toilet seat. We can't toilet duck them away because they just won't go. They're hanging on for dear life. And the reason they're hanging on is because no fucker wants them, because they're not good enough, not for Premier League football, not to fetch you any real value to help you with FFP. So we need a defensive midfielder. But going back to Phillips, it looks like this deal is going to be dead now. Now, Luke Edwards, who brought it to attention a few days ago, he's been very quick to say there might be a bit of brinkmanship going on here. But, I mean, do you think the club are doing the right thing here in terms of not letting Man City dictate this or feel like they have to pay a high loan fee or an obligation to buy? Maybe the Lewis Hall thing's put them off, I don't know. But do you think Newcastle are in a position to bargain here? Because if the news about Joe Linton being out for the rest of the season is true, do they need to just maybe fucking just get this player in rather than trying to play hardball, mate? What do you think?
Certainly, it changes the landscape, doesn't it? Because if Joe Linton is done for more than, if he's done for a couple of months, that's it. I mean, that makes my decision straight away in saying that they have to go out and get somebody in that position, because there just isn't enough in the squad to be able to cope with his loss. And if you lose Bruno for suspension, if you lose Longstaff through suspension or injury, because he spent time out as well, and Miley's minutes have to get managed well, given his age and stuff. So it has to change what they're looking at, and maybe that does change the focus of Phillips. Maybe I've used maybe in the same sentence twice there.
Maybe.
I think they have to relook at it and say, well, yeah, we weren't particularly happy with doing this, but sometimes you've just got to go, well, what's right for right now? And he definitely fits that mold of coming in, and he might need a little bit of time to get up to speed, but it's not like he's not been training. It's not like he's not been playing against some of the best players in the world in training. It's not going to take him an awful lot of time to get massively up to speed. Match sharpness, yes, maybe you might need a couple of games to get back on the ball. But if he's playing that holding role, if he's playing that six, he can then dictate, he can then utilize the likes of Miley and Bruno around him to do the running, to do the dictation of the play further forward. He can sit and he can be that holder. And then you go back to the weekend and you just think, if you've got one that sits, that gap isn't there. That little pass that Rodri plays through to De Bruyne through the two midfielders.
And the ball over the top for the third one as well. You close that down, in my opinion.
Perhaps. I mean, De Bruyne can play that ball from 60, 70 yards away. I mean, that might not.
With a sausage roll in his hand, probably. Is that fucking good? He can have a sausage roll and a latte in hand and still do it.
And blindfolded. He's ultimately that good. So I'm not so sure he maybe stops that one. But the first one, he sits in that gap a little bit like last year's when Haaland picked the ball up deep and ran at the defence. If you've got a six in there, that probably doesn't happen.
Yeah. And
there are a number of times when that's the case, where that Newcastle midfield just get a little bit too high, and there's the gap between the midfield and the defence that gets exploited. And a lot of teams aren't good enough to do it. But the likes of City and Liverpool, Arsenal, they've got those players that can come and drop into that hole. So yeah, Phillips could definitely come in and do a job. I heard today that potentially Palace were front runners now for him.
Yeah, that and Spurs as well. Yeah.
So it's, if they want to go, if they're going to have to do it fairly sharpish, because there are other teams that are sniffing around, and he will want minutes because of the Euros coming up. He's going to want to go wherever he goes, and I think that's part of the drawback for Newcastle. It has been, what's the guarantee of playing time? With Joe Linton now, I think he gets guaranteed playing time. I just don't see any way that he doesn't play at that point. So,
yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, just as I was just about to talk about it, the Pork Chop Express has pulled in. Wrong one there. I'm clicking buttons all over the place here. The Pork Chop Express has pulled up right on schedule. Jack Burton talking about Kante in the midfield there. The Saudi loan deals have gone very, very quiet. Now, I'm choosing to be positive here and say they've gone quiet because maybe something's happening. Maybe something is happening with the Saudi loan deals. Maybe it's something that, the club are considering. If you think about certainly Joe Linton being out, he's been linked a little bit, I think, in terms of some very loose media links. But you look at somebody like Milinkovic-Savic, who really is way too good to be playing in that league. Let's call it right. He is a box-to-box midfielder, powerhouse, strong. He can defend, he can attack, he can score goals, he can create goals. He's got a bit of speed about him. He's a perfect replacement for Joe Linton, who could be out for pretty much the whole season now, because even if he gets over this injury, he still keeps breaking down. If you were to go get Milinkovic-Savic on loan for the rest of the season, to me, that takes care of the massive Joe Linton size hole in the midfield. I'm just looking because his team, Al Hilal, are top of the league. The season doesn't finish until May. There's other players, just to bounce a few Saudi loan deals off you here, Mark. Is it which one is Mahrez's team? Is that Is that Al Ali? Is it? That's the one. Max is that as well, isn't it? I think. They're
so,
third in the
yes.
table. Yeah, and Al Nazir a second. So talking about some of these players here, you're talking about, Mitro was linked. We did a video on Mitro. He plays for Al Hilal, obviously, as well. You got Mitro, you got Milenkovic-Savic, you got Mahrez, who, yes, is 32, but still really, really good. And I think Ian's saying in the comments that Eddie's saying we've got no friends in the market. I don't think that's aimed at the Saudis, Ian. I think that's aimed at the Premier League. Possibly, maybe that's why he's having a dig at Man City. But surely, financial fair play and all that on one side, right? The PIF are paying these players anyway, right? Either paying them 400 grand a week or whatever. Surely they can subsidize 50% of the wages because they're technically paying them twice anyway, aren't they? So why wouldn't we do these Saudi deals?
It's an interesting one. I mean, some of them. I mean, Milinkovic-Savic is on something like 380,000 euros a week or something like that. It's 20 million a year, and he's one of the lower paid ones.
He is one of the lower paid ones. How does he get by, Mark? How does he get by?
And no, the difficulty is for some of them, and somebody pointed this out the weekend. The ones that have been in England, the ones that are subject to the British tax system are going to get hammered if they come back early, because they, at the moment, they're not paying tax out there, and if they then come back, they then have to. I think they'll lose from what they've earned. They'll owe, what is it, 50% or 40 odd percent of what they've been in. So they're going to get absolutely hammered if they come. So the likes of Henderson, Kante probably, Neves, Mitro will all get hammered by the tax man if they come back this year.
Ronaldo, Laporte.
That's part of why we see potentially Jordan Henderson going to Ajax or to Italy, because he's not going to be subject to the same sort of thing. The others, the ones that have come from the likes of Italy and Spain,
and France,
potentially, because they're not going to be. Yes, they're going to be subject to a higher tax bracket here, but then their previous earnings abroad aren't going to be subject to British tax. So those ones are, I guess, are more likely. So the likes of Milinkovic-Savic. But you're right. We see with clubs all the time that they subsidise wages. I mean, how many of Newcastle's players that have been out on loan, the likes of Clark and Hayden, they're not having their wages paid by the clubs that are loaning them. Most of half or more is being paid by Newcastle, because the likes of Borough were never going to pay 40 grand a week to loan Isak Hayden or Kieran Clark. It's just not happening. So the precedent's there for things like that.
Do you agree with Stu? Do you think they're more interested in the success of the Saudi League than they are about Newcastle?
Maybe. But they may look at it and go, well, what creates a good profile? Is one of their clubs at an elite level in Europe then a good pathway? And can they bring one of their marquee players into Europe for 6 months to promote the fact that one of their players has come in and done so well? You could look at it both ways. They may want to hang on to them all for advertising, for TV deals, all that kind of stuff for their league. But it also shows the value of those players if they can get at least a couple of them maybe on loan elsewhere, if they can.
Well, I saw one just before we get Simon's comment. I saw Man United apparently sniffing around Benzema on a 6-month loan deal. Now, that doesn't seem to be working really well for Benzema over there. There's a lot of shit going on. He's not doing media days. He claimed he was stuck away and he couldn't get back to the training camp or whatever it may be. His team, I think, are sitting in 7th. Is it Al Ittihad, isn't it? The one that he plays for? I think they're sitting in 7th place. It's not seeming to work for him. No, that's Ettifak. You were trying to catch me out there. I've learned how to say it. Ettifak. No, he's sitting in 8th, and is it Al Ittihad is Benzema's team, and it's not working for him at all. That move is not working for him. I don't know what's happening there, but I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was thinking, are you taking a piss? I was like, if he goes to Manchester United on loan for 6 months, and this goes into Simon's comment here, he's baffled. It's like you're dying of thirst and you're living near a crystal clear stream, and you refuse to drink from it. Like, if the PIF allow elite players to go to Man United, stuff like that. Imagine Benzema goes to Man United on loan, right? And he's fucking outstanding for 6 months and gets them top 4 and we finish 9th. How the fuck are the PIF going to square that with Newcastle fans? How is that going to be square? I really, really hope that they do something here because, listen, financial fair play ain't going anywhere, right? Regardless of whatever people are going to kick off about, it won't go anywhere right now in this window. And if we kind of get a loan deal done for Calvin fucking Phillips for 7 million quid, because, well, that's skint, right? Get on a plane, go over to Saudi Arabia, speak to His Royal Highness and go, gives fucking 4 players, there's seats on the plane, we're heading back to the Toon, job done. Like, I don't understand why these guys wouldn't want to help this football club. They've bought this football club to be successful. So why wouldn't you want to help them out? I don't understand it.
It's a good question. It really is, because the availability of those players is there, and it comes back to that question from the comment before. What's more important to them right now? Is it the growth of the Saudi League? And if it is that, what does that mean to Newcastle as an entity in terms of what they expect from the club? Is it what it was all meant to be? And I'm not going to have a go at them for this, and this is just purely a question that just pops into your head and goes, is this the be all and end all? I mean, it's such a big play of it from when they came in. So I guess that is a question. But you're right. If you have the facility to go and get a couple of players to bring them in and get ahead of those, it bolsters your revenue in terms of what you can get in from European football again next season. And if you're beating if you're allowing the likes of Manchester United to beat you to those spots, it's not the cleverest bit of business.
It's not, as Ian says, they're the owners. They should help us, and the questions will have to be asked. Merrick's saying, fuck Phillips, he's an unknown commodity, hasn't played enough. We'd have to bet him in and he's shite. Spoken as a true Newcastle fan, has had enough. Yeah, but, if you look at the other players, you've got Ruben Neves, right, could definitely do a job in the Premier League for Newcastle, no doubt. Milinkovic-Savic is a quality player. He really, really is, right? And if we can't get Phillips over the line, then Newcastle should just ditch it and go over to Saudi, PIF, and say, right, we need either this player, this player, this player. And almost like a fucking Argos catalogue, the Saudis should be going, who do you want? Order number 962, we'll have that fucker, tick, tick, tick. and they should be able to get back. Like, I can't get my head around it. If they don't help this team, now I'm going to be quite serious here, right? If Newcastle don't add anything to the squad in January, which by the looks of it right now, they ain't going to do it, right? If they don't add anything to the squad this January and somebody who can affect and influence the starting 11 or an impact player off the bench, and they're just holding out hope that these players are going to get back from fitness and stay fit, then we are fucked. We will not finish in the top 4 for guaranteed. I don't even think we'll finish in the top 6. I think we'll be lucky to finish top 10. I really, really do. If they don't add to the squad in January in 2 or 3 key areas for cover, for bodies, I think we're lucky if we finish top 10.
I think 4's gone. I think the top 4 is gone. Yeah, gone. There are 5, 6 teams now that are far enough ahead that I don't think you claw that back. There are too many players missing. There was too much to go on before the end of the season for that for you to get back to that. Europe is absolutely
and the FA Cup's a real good chance to win and get in. If we get good ties. So that's still there.
Good ties are one thing that Newcastle never tend to get when they get a draw, is it?
Very true. We might get lucky though in the FA Cup. But I mean, realistically, this season now, you're right, 4's gone. You're looking at top 6 in the FA Cup. That's your targets. That's your 2 targets. But we need additions to the squad to achieve those targets. And that's the bit I can't get my head around. If you can't afford things, I mean, like I said, we're sat and listening to Darren Eales talk and all that. And yes, he's a very clever, articulate businessman and all that stuff, right? That doesn't change the fact that the squad isn't good enough, right? The squad isn't big enough. It's not good enough. You got championship players still in there who shouldn't be in there, who shouldn't have even been there in the summer. We should have got rid of them and upgraded on them. Arguably, we should have got, upgraded on Mickey. As much as he works hard, would you not have rather had a more dynamic player with an end product who could have won you more games? These are all these questions that I just don't understand. As Aaron says there, pretty much succinctly, if they don't use the Saudi market, they're thick as fuck. And I don't disagree because, like you say, Mark, you've got the keys, to a cupboard there to open up and go, right, even if you're just going to use we're just going to borrow these nice crystal glasses just for the party that we're going to have. We're going to borrow these nice crystal glasses. We'll wash them and
Break them.
don't break them. We'll wash them and give you them back at the end of the season, we promise, right? But you could even incentivize those players. Let's just say we sign Milenkovic, Savic, and Mitrovic, right? Their team is top of the league. I don't think they've lost a game. No, they haven't lost a game all season. Played 19, won 17, drew 2. If we took those two players from that team, they're already going to win a trophy and a medal, probably. So they're not going to miss out there. The PIF could incentivize those two players and say, you get Newcastle in the top 4, we'll give you another fucking huge bonus. You can come back next season. Like that, I don't understand why this isn't happening. We're halfway through this window and there's not a sniff of anything from Saudi. Now, hopefully that's a good thing because it's all just happening in the background. But mate, if we do nothing with it, how bad is that going to look, man?
Yeah, it's we use the word frustrating an awful lot, don't we? And I spend half my time I do the post matches. That's ultimately what I say because the games are ridiculously frustrating.
They are frustrating.
But I mean, you're right. 15 days in, I did think it might be quiet until the break. Until now,
True.
You have a fortnight until the Fulham Cup game, and then it's a fortnight tomorrow until the Villa game. So there's 2 weeks. I would sincerely hope there is stuff going on in the background, and what you've seen from the likes of Eels and Eddie over the last week or two, a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because
let's hope
they've been caught out before by talking. You really only have to go back to the manager situation at the beginning where Amanda was talking openly about Unai Emery, and that fell through instantly after that, and they've sort of been sucker punched by a couple of things where they've been a little bit too open. They've been a little bit too forthright with reports, trying to get, I think, to curry favour a little bit, get a little bit of good press. They have to have learned from that to be able to do their business quietly, without anybody getting wind of it. And maybe it is a little bit of, well, they've kept stum to kind of put the scent off where they are looking to then bring those players in, and we'll be shocked by them. And you sincerely hope that that's the case for the club, because you're right. If they don't do anything this window, and you're looking at Joe being out for the season, there's no real return date for Barnes. There's no real return date at the moment for the likes of Anderson. Willock seems to keep getting pushed further and further backwards. It goes from bad to worse.
It does, and questions will have to be asked. I mean, we'll kind of maybe cover as well the failings in the transfer window on the Thursday show when we talk about the half-term report. So make sure you tune in for that, guys. 9:30 on Thursday as well. So let's move on to our non-Newcastle section, which is Out of Tune, a chance for us to step away from all things black and white for a minute anyway, and just maybe take the piss out of some of the teams. And what better place to start and take the piss out of the Arsenal manager, Lego Heed himself. Now, Arsenal are over in Dubai, I think, on their warm weather training camp, and Mikel Arteta's been out for a bite to eat, mate. And I looked at this picture that was doing the rounds on social media, and I think I asked the question, who is the biggest twat in this picture? Is it Arteta or Salt Bay? That is a tough competition, mate. It really, really is. And he was lapping up the whole Salt Bay super wank experience as well, wasn't it? And what a knob he is, honestly. I don't even know who I'm talking about there. Either one, either or, mate. Take your pick. Take your
fucking hell, honest.
I
put a comment in a group chat, and I can't say the whole thing on here because it involved some form of violent activity. Let's just say, if Salt Bay came up to my table and started cutting the food and trying to feed me like a toddler, then he wouldn't last very long.
True.
It's just, I mean, he's such a, I don't even think of the words for him. It's just, that looks awful. Feeding him like that with the food off the knife, and then the fact that Arteta couldn't chew it properly was brilliant. But ultimately, they are on the same level. They're both complete morons.
Well, I
How did
heard
Phillips take? I love that comment. Yes.
I heard a rumor that Salt Bay overcooked it, and Arteta went to the kitchen and went, "He's a disgrace," and he kicked off and he threw his plate at him and everything. So I'm just laughing. Is it Salt Bay and Salty Baby? It's kind of both in it combined together, really, because that's what he is Arteta. He's a salty baby. So yeah, that was quite funny. We thought we had seen that one coming. Something else that was quite funny as well was the poor bugger playing for Leicester City. Now, if you hadn't seen it already, he got a red card. It's a bit of a thunderous tackle. Probably about in the 90s.
Awful challenge.
In the 90s, it probably would have been a good challenge, but obviously not in 2024. So it's this lad here, and it's Abdul Fatoui for Leicester. So he rejected a call up. Ghana called him up for the African Cup of Nations, which is getting played right now.
Which means he's turned away. Brain fart.
You've interrupted me. You don't even know what you're saying.
Houghton.
You are on one today, aren't you?
He's turned away.
Chrissy Houghton. You are on one today. What have you been drinking today? Disrupting the flow. You don't even know what you're saying. What is in that drink? So yeah, he's not back at Chrissy Houghton. He's not back Chrissy Houghton. And a Ghana call up to stay with Leicester this month. Only the dozy bastard didn't realise, because he got sent off against Coventry, that he's now suspended for 3 games until February 10th. And the African Cup of Nations ends on February 11th. So he's dropped an almighty bollock there, to be fair, the dozy knacker that he is. So I really hope, and I know for a fact, given how Jamie Vardy is one of his teammates, he's getting the living piss ripped out of him in training. I'm pretty sure about that. So,
yeah, that's it. I mean, just it's almost karma coming back to bite you at that point, isn't it?
Mate, hilarious.
I do feel sorry for him in a sense, but it's a shocking challenge.
It was a bad challenge.
The fact that he's turned down the opportunity to go and play is just. I know not everybody wants to watch or play in Europe in international football, but yeah, I think when he'll look back on that, and it'll be a massive regret for him, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure his agent's probably fucking raging as well, because if he went out a good tournament, he would get a bigger move to the club probably and get some more money. But something that's not funny is the shittest newspaper on the planet. Again, lowering the standards of journalism even lower than a snake's belly, as you can imagine. So this was a headline in The Sun. I think it was called out by a few people. I think Kieran Maguire was one of them, actually. And this was their headline. Now, if you didn't know already, I think it was Bolton Wanderers, Mark, wasn't it? Where one of the fans, was it Bolton Wanderers, wasn't it? When the fan was ill. He had a heart attack, I think it was. He passed away. I think it was possibly, it was Bolton Wanderers. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I can't remember.
I think it was. I think it was Bolton Wanderers. Yeah, but this was the Sun's headline: "Footy binned over ill fan," which was so tone deaf.
Yes, it was.
So it was. But I thought it was Bolton. Yeah. So the guy collapsed at the game and he actually passed away. Is what happened, and that was the Sun's headline to cover somebody losing their life. They're so grotesque. And they're so vulgar, these people. I'm astounded that newspaper is even still allowed to print, Mark. That is fucking horrendous, isn't it?
Scum of the earth. Nothing surprises me with them at all, and it is such a tasteless, thoughtless headline.
Callous as well. Cold, soulless, man.
Horrible. Yeah, as Ian said, they never forgive or forget. You know, they are the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
And that there will be some decent folk that work for them as well, because at the end of the day, a job is a job. But the fact that they do this continually, it just shows a measure of what they are and what they've always been. They've always been like this. We shouldn't be surprised. There's a reason why most football fans will stay away from it. There's an absolute reason for it, and they are just. They're just a horrible entity.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time for Cushy's comment though. Turning the all scum start with Sun. That is a great word association game there, Cushy. Well said. But no, I think you're right. I mean, no one forgets what these guys did to Liverpool fans and their reputation. Just absolutely dreadful. Horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And Merrick says there he wouldn't piss on the current bun. Absolutely too right. And I'd like to call him a word that begins with a C, but we'll get kicked off YouTube, so I won't do that. But yeah, it is. They are terrible. And whoever's allowed that headline to go through really need to answer questions, in my opinion. They really, really do. Simon's saying that the Scum newspaper, his friend died at the Stadium of Light last year in similar circumstances. I'm really sorry to hear that, Simon. The ideology of that newspaper is horrendous. It is, mate. It's absolutely, as Mark says there, it's just unintelligent, soulless, callous shit, really is what it is, one of a better word. And Splat's saying they're right, the son of gutter rats, they really are, mate. They're vile. And I really think something like that should be punished. In the sport, somebody should have them for that, or at least make them redact, that kind of headline on their website or whatever it is. But they probably come up with some wishy-washy, woolly apology for it, even though they don't give a fuck, which is even worse. But yeah, we'll leave them exactly where they belong, Mark, in the bin. So we're finishing up with the last one, and it's a former player turned manager, and I'm not really sure he's made the right job choice, Mark. I'm talking about this happy camper. It's not the next series of Luther. No, it's Troy Deeney. Yeah, it's Troy Deeney, looking extremely grumpy. Troy Deeney, obviously ex-Watford, and briefly Birmingham City striker, who's now the manager of Forest Green. I think the 400th manager they've had in about 6 months, possibly. I think Duncan Ferguson was there. There was a lady there for a time. Can't remember her name. And now, obviously, Troy Deeney is there. And Troy Deeney took the very interesting approach of slagging off one of his players publicly. I'll tell you what he said about this lad. So this kid used to play for Coventry. I think he was in the playoff final. I think he was actually. And he's called Fankati Darbo. So this is what Troy Deeney said about this player after I think they got beat 2-0 off Harrogate Town, the mighty Harrogate Town. He said he's not been good enough for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks now. Why do you think he was dropped at the start? I've told him in front of everyone that 6 months ago he had a kick to go to the Premier League. Now he wouldn't get a game in the National League. And I mean, what's your take on a manager doing that to a player, Mark, in public as much as Troy Deeney has done? I know some managers have had that say a day, but what do you think about it?
I said to you sort of offline that there's an element that says, well, what's he done before? What has he tried to do? What has he tried to do to improve the situation before? Maybe this is the last resort. But the more you sit and think about it, you just don't do this sort of thing in public. This is behind closed doors. This is, if you're going to go for a player like that, that has to be done in the confines of the dressing room. Now, it appears he may have come out and apologised to him since.
Has he? Because of pressure, because of media pressure, not because of anything else.
Because ultimately he's done the wrong thing. Maybe this does get the kid a kick up the arse and it gets him back playing better. But it ultimately is the wrong way. I think Martin O'Neill was pretty scathing about it, wasn't he? When he was he on TalkSport talking about it? He was pretty scathing about it. It's not the right way to do it. It sort of harks back to, was it the Hull? Was it Pardew on the pitch?
Oh, no, that was Phil Brown with the
Phil Brown. Sorry,
and Jimmy Bullard did the celebration, didn't he? Which was
hilarious. and he took the mickey of it. I mean, Pardew, Phil Brown. There's a reason I get them mixed up, but there's a reason why this sort of stuff doesn't go on, because it generally doesn't work. You can say overall the team come out and be quite scathing about the way they perform, but you just can't. You can't do that sort of public shaming of a player. And I know you touched on when we were talking before we came on about sort of player welfare and mental health and things like that. And I think you're absolutely right. But ultimately, it just doesn't lead to a good relationship between player and manager if the manager is just going to run to the press and start having a go at them when he's not happy with the way that they played.
Yeah, but he did turn around as well, not just about that one player. He did say that these players should be used to losing. Now that's all they do is lose. And he said, I've told him. He said, I apologize to the fans. He went, I take full responsibility. And he said, but why should I take all of the heat and they should take none of the heat? And he's part of me kind of agrees with that in a way, because if the players aren't putting it in and they're putting in shit performances and manager after manager just get nothing out of them, I kind of understand the frustration there. But as you say, Mark, that he's obviously very inexperienced in the world of management. And not to mention, to top it all off, he slagged off his players, threw this one player under the bus wheels. And the day after that, he was doing punditry work on Sky for Watford versus Coventry or something like that. And somebody turned around and said, great to see he's on the training pitch putting things right at Forest Green. So, just be careful what you're, how many stones you're throwing there, mate.
When your team is sitting bottom of the Football League, it's maybe not the greatest place for you to be is front and center of a national TV production where you're sitting in the studio talking about others. Why are you not working with these players that you've just slagged off? Why are you not working with them to improve them? Why are you not getting your team better and working on your game plan more for the coming games? Which I think was it tomorrow night? Is it that they were playing again? That's not a good look for him at all. I don't get the feeling he will last very long there at all.
Yeah, I get the feeling that Forest Green might be looking for a new manager very, very soon. But neither one of us are interested in applying. So there you go. We'll leave it at that one. So, thank you very much, everyone who's tuned in tonight. Thank you for the comments. It always helps the episode flow. We really appreciate it. As we mentioned a couple of times, we are going to be back Thursday night. We're doing our half-term report on Newcastle. We're going to score the players. We're going to score Eddie. We've got to talk a little bit about where we think things have gone right, where things have gone wrong. Talk a bit about the transfers in the summer. If there's been any breaking transfer news, which I highly doubt, by Thursday, we will talk about that as well. And yes, as George has kindly reminded me there as well, if you can smash a like on a video,
yes,
really
please.
Appreciate it. It helps channel grow, helps all the algorithms, and helps people find us on YouTube as well. And if you haven't already, click subscribe, recommend us to family and friends, help us get that 7,000, get in it to win it for a cracking prize for that one as well. Have a great night wherever you're doing, everybody, and we'll catch you on Thursday, 9:30 as well. We'll see you later.
Take care, guys.